The compass tattoo on Dean's forearm was a drunken mistake from 9 years ago. He hadn't thought about the woman who matched it in almost as long. Then 3 identical 7-year-old girls in designer coats walked up to him at a dusty playground and tore his quiet, calloused life apart. Dean didn't believe in serendipity. He believed in the structural integrity of oak, the inescapable reality of property taxes, and the fact that a 6-year-old boy could survive on nothing but chicken nuggets and sheer chaotic willpower. It was a Tuesday afternoon, and the air in the park tasted of damp earth and exhaust fumes from the nearby interstate. Dean sat on a splintering green bench, a lukewarm paper cup of bitter coffee in his rough hands. The sawdust ingrained in his skin made his fingers feel like sandpaper. He ran a custom furniture repair shop out of a converted garage. A polite way of saying he spent his days gluing rich people's antique chairs back together while trying to keep his own life from falling apart. His son Toby was currently buried up to his elbows in the sandbox, aggressively trying to force a plastic dump truck to consume a rock. "Don't eat the sand, Tobe," Dean called out, his voice carrying the low, gravelly rasp of a man who chronically slept 4 hours a night. Toby didn't look up, but the rock dropped from his hand. Small victories. Dean leaned back, rolling the sleeves of his faded flannel shirt up past his elbows to let the autumn breeze hit his skin. The cold felt good against the dull ache in his joints. His left forearm bore a tattoo, a jagged, imperfect compass, with the North Star missing, heavily scarred over from the amateur who had needled it into him 9 years ago in a dimly lit parlor that smelled of green soap and stale beer. He rubbed it absently. It was a nervous habit, tracing the raised ink when the exhaustion hit him the hardest. The park was mostly empty, save for a distracted nanny in scrubs on her phone near the swings, and 3 little girls walking in unison near the oak trees. Dean barely noticed them at first. He was too busy calculating whether he could stretch his remaining bank balance to cover Toby's impending dental bill and the overdue electric notice. But the girls were impossible to ignore for long. They moved with an eerie, coordinated precision. Triplets. They looked to be about 7 or 8 years old. They wore identical charcoal wool peacoats with heavy brass buttons, pristine white tights, and patent leather shoes that had no business being in a public park. Their dark hair was cut into sharp, identical bobs. They looked like they had wandered out of a high-end European fashion catalog and into the gritty reality of municipal landscaping. They stopped about 10 feet from Dean's bench. Dean frowned, lowering his coffee cup. He glanced around, looking for their parents. The nanny by the swings was still furiously texting, completely oblivious. The girl in the middle took a step forward. Her eyes were a piercing, stormy gray. It was a cold color, jarring on a child. "Hello, sir," she said. Her voice was polite, clipped, and devoid of the usual childish hesitation. "Hey," Dean said slowly, sitting up straighter. "You kids lost your mom or dad around." The girl on the left tilted her head, her gaze dropping to Dean's bare, muscular forearm resting on his knee. "Our mother is at work," the middle girl continued, stepping closer. The smell of expensive, subtle lavender detergent wafted off their coats, completely masking the smell of the park's damp leaves. The girl on the right pointed a small gloved finger at Dean's arm. "Our mother has a tattoo just like yours." Dean froze. The physical reaction was instantaneous and violently unpleasant. The blood drained from his face, dropping like a stone into his steel-toed boots. A high, thin ringing sound started in his ears, drowning out the distant hum of traffic and the squeak of the playground swings. "Just like yours," He looked down at his arm. The jagged compass. The missing star. It wasn't a piece of flash art off a parlor wall. It was custom. He had drawn it himself on a grease-stained napkin in a dive bar in Seattle, laughing with a woman whose face he had spent the last 9 years trying to scrub from his memory. "What did you say?" Dean's voice was barely a whisper. He felt a sudden sharp nausea. The coffee in his stomach turned to acid. "The compass," the middle girl said, unfazed by the sudden intensity radiating from the large calloused man. "Hers is on her shoulder. The top point is broken." Dean's hands began to shake. He placed his coffee cup on the bench before he crushed it. It wasn't possible. It was a statistical impossibility. It was a cruel joke played by an indifferent universe. "What's your mother's name?" Dean asked. His throat felt like it was lined with broken glass. Before the girls could answer, a panicked voice shrilled across the grass. "Ruby Hazel Piper." The distracted nanny was sprinting toward them, her phone shoved hastily into her pocket. She looked terrified, her face flushed red. She reached the girls and immediately began herding them backward by their shoulders. "I am so sorry, sir," the nanny gasped, looking at Dean's worn clothes and tattooed arms with a flash of blatant, unapologetic judgment. "They aren't supposed to wander." "Wait," Dean said, standing up. He was 6'2", broad-shouldered from years of hauling timber. The nanny visibly flinched, pulling the girls tighter against her legs. "We have to go," the nanny snapped. "The car's waiting. Come along, girls. Ms. Hastings will be furious if we're late." Hastings. The name